The other day, I was conversing with a friend, and one of the topics that was brought up was our fears, or more specifically, a fear that we have that most people do not. And one of the fears that popped into my head almost instantaneously was my fear of going insane. Now, disclaimer, fear would be too strong of a descriptive, so in actuality, it would be a dilemma I've contemplated about that is unlikely to happen, but I've thought about it a couple of times in my life. But it was enough for the blank spot in my head that is responsible for consciousness to have this sequence of thoughts swell up from the barrier of perceived nothingness. Fundamentally, this worry from childhood was birthed from the same angsty problem that most teenagers face, and that is the basic scenario of not fitting in, where one shows a facet of themselves to other people that had not previously been established and is met with disdain. So why does this make me feel insane? Well, when I would show a part of myself to another person, it was usually met with being misunderstood or the will of not trying to understand because this person is just different. It always made me feel as if I was always on that edge, ready to slip off. And through time and chance and transitioning into adulthood, people you meet will understand you, or at least have the courtesy to understand. So why did I feel insane again, or was I at least fearful of it? Well, I feel like it was the juxtaposition of this new and past me, because I had changed so much in the past couple years. This instability, coupled with the fact that I already indulged in the activity of swimming out to the edge of reality to poke it with a stick per se, made me feel insane, or at least made me fearful of it. And I kind of want to explore this crazy part of the brain. This, what you're feeling right now, is called a sensation. Take one last look at your environment. It's how we detect stimulus. And we take this stimulus, organize it, and interpret it into what we call perception. How do you process the environment? And how do you see the environment? What happens to you when a song sails the shores of sound waves and enters the murky waters in our heads? Sometimes it'll create a hurricane, and sometimes it'll be as if we're in the eye of the storm. What happens to you when a memory fades and then enters your consciousness with holes that we try to crystallize into existence, changing the memory altogether? What happens to you when a feeling arises and your perception of the environment corresponds with your intentions? And what happens when it doesn't? What happens when you look at this color and see a sunset and someone else sees a flower petal? I think the worst feeling is when someone doesn't want to see anything at all. Here is the crux of my dilemma. It's not that I want people to see the world the way I do. In actuality, far from it, and I love when people don't. But it's the amount of people that don't see the world in a way that is uniquely them, with acknowledgement that our thoughts are fickle, in terms that they're supposed to be molded, scrapped, clawed, eviscerated, destroyed, protected, and nursed with diligent reflection and life experiences. Now, I would be lying if I didn't say this led me into a period of my life where I was cynical of people's actions and thoughts. And I would also like to acknowledge that this fear of loneliness and connection led me astray into a pessimistic, irritated view of people. But I think I've entered the next chapter in my life. And then I spotted something swimming up the sea of thoughts. This irritation that was sitting in my head like a virus allowed to roam free stemmed from my perceptions that was eating away at itself. Our perceptions can be taught through behavior, and this behavior was eating away at itself like an Ouroboros, causing negative reinforcements. So I want to explain my perception in a long-winded metaphor, and hopefully it's understood. I was a lone sailor starting my journey of adventure, and I looked ahead to the sun in the sky as my guiding light of optimism. Soon this yellow light turned to red, and my optimism was at its peak. This red painting in the sky soon drenched with blackness, and the sun set and it was now dark. But I was still pretty close to land, and I could still see the light from the lighthouse shining in my darkness. And then something happened. The ships around me started to sink, and I couldn't understand why they were sinking. This nervousness came from irritation and incompetence, and I couldn't understand why they were sinking. The light is still on. And then I realized something again. That when someone starts their journey, they get further and further away from themselves. The lighthouse is them. And as I got farther in my journey, I could no longer see the light from the lighthouse. And I started to fall into despair and insanity. And in this moment, I realized something again. That once you step outside of yourself, you can find something else, another light in the darkness, a star. And I just want this video to tell people that there are stars. And I know that's easier said than done, but I just want to let you know that it is there, and you can find it.